Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something kind of different with AI.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not just talking about the tech itself, but more like how we see it, you know?
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Like, think about when Spotify just nails that song recommendation.
Right.
It's like, whoa, did it read my mind?
It can feel almost human sometimes.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack today. The good, the bad, and maybe even the slightly creepy side of AI feeling like us. We've got a ton of research here, from user psychology to AI design, even how companies use this in online shopping. It gets wild.
You know, it's fascinating because this isn't some surface-level tech thing. It actually taps into something really deeply human.
Yeah.
We're just wired to see human traits and stuff, even if it's not really there.
Oh, tell me about it. Some days, I swear I have better conversations with my houseplants than with real people.
Exactly. And companies are picking up on this big time. They're giving AI names, voices, you name it, whole personalities crafted by teams of people. It's like they're building us a digital friend to hang out with.
It's true. Like, think about Amazon's Alexa, for instance. In some homes, she's practically part of the family.
Right.
You ask about the weather, to play music, set reminders. You might even catch yourself saying thank you to her. It's wild.
It's like she's right there in the room with you.
Totally. So, have studies actually shown that people like this, though? Like, does making AI feel more human make us like it more?
They have, yeah. Turns out this personification really increases how satisfied people are with the tech. It just feels like you're interacting with something smart, something helpful. For some, it can even combat loneliness, which is really interesting.
So is this all sunshine and roses then? Are we heading to this world where everyone's got their perfect AI buddy, all problems solved?
Well, not so fast. There's definitely a flip side to all of this. When we start seeing AI as this human-like figure, we kind of expect it to act like one, right?
Yeah.
We want it to understand us, to empathize with us, basically to have feelings like we do.
Okay, so what happens when things don't quite line up with that expectation? Because let's face it, AI, as advanced as it is, it's not human.
Exactly. And that's where the issues start to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
AI, even the really, really fancy stuff, it doesn't have genuine emotions, no consciousness like we do.
It's not actually feeling things.
Right. It's simulating human interaction. That's all it is. Following algorithms, which are basically like sets of instructions. It's processing information and spitting out a response based on those instructions.
It's like that friend who always gives the same generic advice no matter what's going on.
Oh, totally.
It's like, just breathe or look on the bright side. It sounds nice, but it doesn't really get it, you know?
That's such a good analogy. And when AI inevitably falls short of those expectations, those human-like expectations we've put on it, well, we can feel let down, disappointed, and we might even start to distrust AI altogether.
And that's where things get tricky, right? Because AI can do some incredible things that could really benefit us. But if we just write it off because it didn't live up to this fantasy of a perfect AI friend, well, we might be missing out big time. It's like tossing out a whole toolbox just because one screwdriver didn't work the way you expected it to.
Exactly. And this is where understanding the why behind the AI really matters. Like using AI for something like online shopping. That's totally different from expecting it to be your therapist.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing that. So give me an example then where this AI personification thing actually works well.
Sure. So let's take e-commerce, online shopping. AI is really changing the game there with what they call hyper-personalisation.
Yeah.
Basically, it analyzes your browsing history, what you buy, even stuff you do on social media, and then it uses all that data to recommend things you might actually like.
Oh, yeah. Those you might also like suggestions. They can be creepily accurate sometimes. It's like, is the website reading my mind? But I gotta admit, sometimes I do end up finding cool stuff I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Exactly. And while it might feel a bit strange at times, it makes the whole shopping experience better. You discover new things, and it feels like the website actually gets your taste.
So in that case, the AI isn't trying to be your friend. It's more like your personal shopper.
Exactly.
It's helping you find that perfect thing.
Now, imagine using an AI-powered language learning app. Would it be better if the AI had a distinct personality or tried to show human-like emotions?
That's a good question. I guess it could make learning more fun, more engaging. But wouldn't it also be kind of distracting? I mean, I'm trying to learn a language, not make a new AI pen pal.
Exactly. And that's the key point. The way we personify AI needs to match what we're actually trying to do with it. It's not one size fits all.
Okay, so we need to be smart about when we embrace this whole AI personification thing. We want the benefits, but we don't want to fall into that trap of thinking AI is something it's not.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking comes in, big time. We got to remember, behind those friendly voices and those clever responses, there's still a complex system of algorithms at work. AI is not magic. It's a tool built by humans.
It's like being a savvy consumer, right? We don't just believe everything we see in an ad. We got to have that same kind of critical eye when interacting with AI, even if it feels like we're chatting with a friend.
Precisely. It's about keeping a healthy dose of skepticism. And remembering AI is a tool created by humans, for better or for worse.
Okay, so how do we actually navigate this increasingly complex world of AI personification then? What should we as users be thinking about as we interact with this stuff more and more?
That's a great question, and it leads us to some of the key takeaways from this deep dive. One of the biggest things to remember is that AI is constantly evolving. What seems cutting edge today might be outdated tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. It's like the smartphone industry. There's always a new model with more bells and whistles just around the corner.
Exactly. And as AI gets more advanced, it's likely going to become even better at mimicking human behavior. Think about those incredibly realistic deepfakes that are out there. Or imagine virtual assistants that can not only understand what you say, but also interpret your tone of voice, your facial expressions, even your subtle emotional cues.
Whoa, that's both amazing and a little terrifying at the same time.
It definitely raises some interesting questions, right? Like, if AI gets that good at simulating human interaction that we can barely tell the difference, how will that affect how we connect with each other, our own sense of self? Will it even change what it means to be human?
Those are some deep thoughts. It's almost like we're wading into sci-fi territory here. But this stuff is getting real and fast.
And that's why it's so important to start thinking about these questions now, before the future of AI catches up to us.
So we can't just sit back and let AI happen to us. We need to be actively involved in shaping how it develops and how it's used.
Exactly. And one of the most crucial questions we need to ask ourselves is, how will we, each of us, choose to approach AI in the future? Will we see it as a helpful tool, a fascinating mystery, or something to be wary of?
That's a great question to ponder, and one we'll leave you with as we wrap up this part of our deep dive. But don't worry, we'll be back to explore more of these fascinating issues in just a moment.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were just starting to think about the future of AI and how we as humans are going to approach it.
It is a really complex issue, you're right. And I think what really stuck with me is that we can't just lump all AI together, you know?
Right.
Like you were saying, using AI to help you shop online, that's totally different from, say, using AI for mental health support.
Absolutely, yeah. And that brings us to another really crucial point. Context is key. The impact of AI personification, it really depends on what we're using it for and what we're hoping to achieve with it.
Okay, so remind me again, why does this matter?
Okay, so let's think back to that e-commerce example. The AI is basically acting as your personal shopping assistant.
Right.
Suggesting things you might like based on your data.
Yeah, and we talked about how in that situation, a bit of personification can actually be a good thing. It makes the shopping experience more fun, more engaging.
Exactly. But let's switch gears for a second. Let's say you're using an AI-powered language learning app, one of those things. Would it be helpful if the AI had this big personality or tried to act like your best friend?
That's a good question. I mean, I've used those apps before. They can be really helpful for learning vocab and pronunciation. But if the AI was trying too hard to be funny or chatty, I think I'd find it super distracting. Like, I'm there to learn Spanish, not to make small talk with a robot.
Exactly. And in that context, the personification might actually work against you. Instead of focusing on the language, you might be too caught up in the AI's personality.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. We need to be thoughtful about when and where we embrace AI personification. It's about finding that balance, using it to our advantage, but without getting tricked into thinking AI is something it's not.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another important point we need to keep in mind: the need for critical thinking, especially in the age of this increasingly sophisticated AI.
So you're saying we can't just blindly trust AI, even if it seems super friendly and helpful on the surface?
Exactly. We need to be aware of the tricks that are being used to make AI feel more human, more relatable. Remember, behind those friendly voices and those clever responses, there are still algorithms, those sets of instructions telling the AI how to behave.
It's like those behind-the-scenes videos you see for movies and stuff, all the special effects, the CGI. It takes a ton of work to make it all look so real.
Exactly. It's the same with AI. There's a lot going on under the hood, and we shouldn't just take it at face value.
Okay, so how can we actually be more critical thinkers when it comes to AI then? What should we be looking out for?
Well, first and foremost, remember that AI is constantly evolving. Like we were saying earlier, what seems cutting edge today might be old news tomorrow.
Yeah, it feels like every week there's some new AI breakthrough or some crazy application I've never even thought of.
It can be hard to keep up, for sure. And as AI continues to advance, it's likely going to get even better at mimicking human behavior. Remember those deep fakes we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Imagine those becoming even more realistic, to the point where you can't even tell if you're watching a real video or a complete fabrication.
Okay, yeah, now I'm getting a little creeped out. I mean, that's a whole other level of deception, right? Like, what if someone creates a deep fake of me saying something I never actually said?
It is a genuine concern, yeah, especially as the technology becomes more accessible and easier to use. And it's not just about deep fakes either. Imagine virtual assistants that can not only understand your words, like we were saying, but they can also interpret your tone of voice, your facial expressions, even your subtle emotional cues.
Whoa, that's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But it does raise some big questions, like, if AI gets that good at pretending to be human, how's that going to change how we relate to each other? Will we even be able to tell who's real and who's not anymore?
Those are definitely questions we need to be asking ourselves, and sooner rather than later.
Okay, so how do we even begin to wrap our heads around all of this? It's a lot to process, for sure.
You're right, it is complex. But there are things we can do, steps we can take. First, stay informed. Pay attention to what's happening in the world of AI, the latest developments. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, of course. Maybe even take a class on AI if you're feeling really ambitious. The more you understand how AI works, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions about how you use it and how you let it into your life.
So knowledge is power, right? We can't just passively consume AI. We need to understand what's going on behind the curtain.
Exactly. And another thing we need to be really mindful of is the data we're sharing with these AI systems. All those personalized recommendations and those targeted ads, they're not magic, right? They're based on the information we're constantly feeding into these systems. Through our online activity, our social media interactions, even our voice commands to those virtual assistants we were just talking about.
You're right. It's like we're leaving this trail of digital breadcrumbs everywhere we go.
Yeah.
And AI is following that trail, building up this whole profile of who we are and what we like.
That's a great analogy. It's like having this digital shadow that follows you everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shadow, it can be used for good or for bad. It can help companies give us better products and services, sure. But it can also be used to manipulate us or target us with misleading information.
Okay, so data privacy is a huge concern in the age of AI. We need to be way more careful about how we protect our personal information.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individual responsibility either. We need to push for stronger data privacy regulations and hold companies accountable for how they're using our data.
It's like we're all living in this digital world now, and we got to make sure we're setting the rules for how that world operates. We can't just let the tech companies call all the shots.
Exactly. And that brings us to what might be the most important point of all. AI, at its core, is a tool. It's a product of human ingenuity, like we were saying. And ultimately, it's up to us to decide how we want to use it.
We have the power to use AI to make our lives better, to solve problems, to connect with each other in meaningful ways. But we also have to be aware of the potential downsides, the risks of bias, the potential for manipulation, the erosion of our privacy and our autonomy.
It's a balancing act, no doubt.
Yeah.
But by staying informed, thinking critically, and engaging in these conversations, we can help shape a future where AI is used for good.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into AI personification, what should our listeners be thinking about going forward? What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own lives?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the final and maybe most crucial part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the psychology of AI personification to the ethical challenges it presents. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Knowing all that we've discussed, how will you, our listener, approach AI in the future? Will you see it as a helpful tool, a fascinating mystery, or something to be wary of?
That's a really thought-provoking question to ponder, and one that we'll leave you with for now as we wrap up this part of our deep dive. But don't worry, we'll be right back to explore those questions and more in just a moment. Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've been on this journey exploring AI personification, why it's so captivating, and why we need to be cautious. But now the question is, how do we actually approach AI in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we all need to grapple with because AI is becoming more and more integrated into our lives.
It's true. It's everywhere these days.
And as it gets more sophisticated, as we were saying before, it's going to get even better at mimicking us humans.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell what's real and what's not anymore.
Exactly. So it's more important than ever that we approach AI with this sense of curiosity, but also a healthy dose of skepticism.
So how do we do that? What are some practical steps we can take to navigate this whole AI landscape?
Well, first things first, stay informed, keep up with the latest advancements, read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, of course. You could even take a class on AI if you're feeling ambitious.
So knowledge is power, right? The more we understand how AI works, the better equipped we'll be to make good decisions about it.
Exactly. And another thing we got to remember is to be mindful of the data we're sharing. All those personalized recommendations and targeted ads, they're not magic. They're based on the information we're constantly giving these systems.
Yeah, all our online activities, social media, even our voice commands, it all adds up.
Right. And that data can be used in ways we may not even realize. So it's smart to be aware of what you're sharing and maybe even adjust your privacy settings, to protect yourself.
Yeah, don't just blindly click accept on those cookie banners anymore.
Absolutely. Take a moment to understand what's being collected and how it could be used. And remember, it's not just about individual responsibility. We also need to advocate for those strong data privacy regulations.
Yeah, we need to hold companies accountable for how they're using our data.
Exactly. We got to make sure the rules of the digital world are fair and protect us. But ultimately, and this is really key, AI is a tool.
A tool, yeah.
It's a product of human ingenuity, and it's up to us to decide how we use it.
We can choose to use AI to make our lives better, to solve problems, to connect with each other.
Right. But we got to be mindful of the potential downsides, too, the risk of bias, manipulation, all that stuff we talked about.
It's a balancing act for sure. But if we stay informed, think critically, and keep having these conversations, well, then we can actually shape a future where AI is used for good.
Couldn't said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI personification, we want to leave you with this. The future of AI is in our hands.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just along for the ride. We have a voice. We have a choice.
And that choice matters. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this has given you something to think about, maybe even inspired you to learn more about this amazing world of AI. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.